Hi guys, you there?
Hi mate, yeah, just
Hiya.
Hiya, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad at all, thank you very much. Is Ashley there?
I'm coming.
Perfect.
Should be here now.
Perfect, everybody's here. So yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to speak at a property conference. Really looking forward to having both of you guys here, and the amount of value that you're going to give to people. So for those that don't know kind of who you are, you must be living under a rock. But the best way, if you could both introduce yourself, please, Ashley, you go first, and then we'll get stuck straight in with the presentation.
Yeah, I've got the presentation in the background, so hopefully I can load that up and then share it, and then Ashley can talk it through as we go through it. I'll go to the presentation mode so that Ashley's got it in the background.
Yeah, I can see that. Can everyone see and hear me?
All good.
Everyone good?
Everyone hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So welcome. I've just been listening into the last speaker there, some good detailed information, and we could talk all day about what's going on in coronavirus and what we need to do and where the property market may go, may not go, and that type of thing. But we only have an hour today, and our subject that we're talking about is rent to buy, or rent to own, lease to buy, and so on. So to give you a bit of an introduction to myself, I've been in the UK now for 17 years, come August 1st from Australia. I've been investing in property since I've been here. I've been through the crash, and we did okay because of the way that we purchased, if you like. I've got a large portfolio of service accommodation properties, HMOs, buy-to-lets. I've got the largest pub in Tottenham. Sorry for any other football fans out there, but we don't do it for football. And we have a hotel there as well, myself and Jimmy London, who originally 4 years ago was a student of mine on HMOs. He now has 34 and 2 hotels and the largest pub with me. We also train together, myself, Immanuel, Jimmy, Brett Allegra Wood, who owns Gladfish. He's got 1,250 properties. We all work together systematically and help other people out there globally now, because you know, we do the Australian stuff and the Singapore stuff as well. However, my first passion in life is property, and it has been for decades now. And myself and the guys, we set up Wealth and Success Academy, and we do the Straight Talking Property podcast, and it is what it says. We are pretty straight up and upfront with what we do, and there's a few people on here I know who I recognize, so you'll know that we don't sort of pull any punches. So that's me in a nutshell. I've got nurseries, children's nurseries. I've got 2 of those. Behind me, we've got the Desk Club. It's something that I opened up just before coronavirus. We've got a grant for it. It's basically the grants paid for everything that we did to set it up, so we're quite happy there. And it is serviced offices, so we see a way that the high street is going, which is why I'm now starting to look into this business as well. Got various other businesses as well, and you can find out more about all of us. Just go to Wealth and Success Academy, wherever you see social media, and there's loads of free videos on YouTube. So let me introduce Immanuel. Immanuel and I have been friends, I think, about 5 years now, mate. Where's the time going? It's just zipping by. So Immanuel's been investing in property, as he said there, for over 25 years in London and surrounding areas. He's been through some of the worst property cycles that anyone can think of, and came out breathing. And this is just another one of those cycles that's going to happen, although it's been obviously pre-prepared by the coronavirus. Nothing we could really do to prep it. It was quite quick. However, what we do is we try to stay ahead of the curve, so that we're working here before we get here, and we're working here before it starts to slide down again. So Immanuel, if you want to go to your next slide and just give a little bit more information about yourself and your experience.
Sure. So I've been involved in property, as Ashley said, for over 25 years. I've been through 2 economic downturns. The last one, which was probably the worst one, 2007-8, where the bank started to pull the plug. And I do believe that this time is different to last time. And there's many reasons for that, and I won't go to that in today, but I have my own views on that. So I started off my journey as a designer for Sharp's Bedrooms. I was their most successful franchise. I took over a store in Finchley turning over 250,000. In the first 12 months, got it up to sort of 2 million. So in terms of sales and marketing, I've got a pretty good idea. I was the founder of Mortgage Savings Centre. I had over 100 brokers and people working for me at the same time. The real significance of that is that I was instrumental in bringing around the change of annual interest to daily interest with the first company that came to the UK, which was at the time First Active Mortgages, which is now Virgin Money. So those of you that haven't donated through the Virgin Money link for the NHS fundraiser we're doing today, if you can please do that. That's why we're here. That's what we're trying to do, to help and inspire and do things for the NHS. I'm also author to the 6 Steps of Financial Freedom. That is my book, and we'll make it available as a free download to everybody that actually registers and donates to the NHS. It's been endorsed by people like Brian Tracy and Bill Bartman. So that's a really good book in showing people how to get out of debt as quickly as possible. And I created that on the back of my mortgage business, showing people how to get out of all debt, including their mortgage, with their existing income. So that's that. So I am a property developer and owner. I'm part of Broadwing Homes. I have a large property portfolio. I'm also head of Developers Boardroom, which is a group of SME developers, architects, surveyors, quantity surveyors, helping other people in the development world to just find and do developments better than what they currently do. And like Sunny, I'm also a master NLP practitioner. I'm a mindset coach. I'm a property trainer. And what Sunny was saying this morning, I concur 100%. Your mind is such a powerful tool. And if you use it in the correct way, you can get so much more out of it. And everything is about the voice, our internal voice. So while Ashley and I are speaking, you will have an internal dialogue with yourself all the time. Do I like them? Can I use this information? Is it true? And so forth. You'll have all of this internal dialogue, and it's making yourself aware of that conversation that you have with yourself on an ongoing basis. So that's really my sort of knowledge and expertise at this moment in time.
Good man. Yeah. So where we met 5 years ago, I was running a course, and I think it might have been the same course that Jimmy London was on, maybe. That's where we met, wasn't it, with your son?
It was. And
we've done great things ever since. We're going to keep doing great things. So let me introduce, now that you know our credentials and the credibility and why we, have been invited here. And firstly, Joshua, mate, this is incredible. Forget the fact that you're going to be sitting here for about 36 hours over the next 3 days, focusing and learning a lot, man. This is a great way to get free learning, eh? Well done.
That's my plan for it all.
Yeah, well done. What a great strategy. But mate, well done. And I really hope that everyone gives as much as they can to help the NHS. My kids have both been in hospital for various reasons since the coronavirus took effect, and I can't. For me, I'm not praising the NHS now. I've praised them ever since I've been in this country, because I've had a few things to do with them, and they're absolutely incredible, not just during this period, all the time. So let's help them out. So Josh, yeah, well done, mate. And let's kick on, because I know we're restricted by time.
Yeah, I just want to add something. I just don't think people realise how much time, effort and energy has been gone into this event to put the speakers together, put it all together. You've done an amazing feat in such a short period of time. And I applaud you, really. Take my hat off to you. It's an amazing feat. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for thinking of other people other than yourselves and getting this on the platform. So thank you.
Thanks. Cheers for being here.
You just got more compliments than I had in 5 years from that man. He's a hard taskmaster, believe me. Right, so let's crack on. So rent to buy, rent to own, lease to buy, whatever you want to call it. We're basically going to show you how you as a property owner can use rent to buy, or as an investor or a budding property investor, shall we say, can use it, or even somebody who may be a first home buyer, to help you get onto the property ladder with as little money as possible. Now, listen, straight from the outset, you cannot do this with zero money. You cannot do it. You cannot buy a house for £1. You cannot do it. What we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about control. We're going to talk about cash flow. And we're going to talk about controlling an asset that you also know that's going to go up in value over the years to come. Is also going to give you a monthly income. the number one asset to have, in my opinion. So, Immanuel, over to you, my good friend.
Yeah, so over the next 3 days, you're going to listen to unbelievable speakers with lots of different strategies, and some strategies will resonate with you, others won't. So we're going to be teaching one strategy of many that work in many economic cycles, especially in the current economic cycle that we're now in. It worked very, very well in 2007, 8, 9, 10. It worked on a regular basis, and it's also a strategy that I use as a developer on a regular basis. So this is just a hybrid of that. So I think the easiest thing to talk about is a traditional buy-to-let investor. If they're going to buy a property, whether it be a single let or a HMO or a service accommodation, if they buy in the normal conventional way, when they invest in property, they would normally have to put in a 20 to 25% deposit. So I'm going to talk through a scenario in terms of the numbers to give you an idea why buying that way, especially in the current marketplace, might not be the best strategy to actually use. So as a buy-to-let investor, when you buy a typical investment, I've just taken a very generic number, purchase price of 150,000. A 25% deposit, it's going to be 37,500, quite a sizable deposit. In addition to that, you're going to have stamp duty. If it's an additional property, the stamp duty is higher. You're going to have legal and broker fees, your solicitor to actually do the conveyancing, a broker fee to arrange the mortgage for you. In addition to that, you're going to have a valuation fee. You're going to have mortgage fees by the mortgage lender to actually give you the mortgage. They might want it up front, add it to the loan, but it's additional cost. So you're looking at a total outlay for a traditional vanilla buy-to-let property of £45,000. So if you have £45,000, great, you can buy it. But if you've only got £45,000, once you've bought your first one, what do you do now? So you've used all your money. So as property investors, we always have to come up with new and creative ways of using our money to be able to leverage and gear as much as possible to take advantage of opportunities that are going to present themselves. Now, we're going to talk about this strategy. We'll talk later about how you find the strategies, but I want you to get the basic principle of just how much money you normally need in a vanilla buy-to-let property, whether it be a single let where you get £200 to £300 a month cash flow, as a HMO, £500 to £1,000, service accommodation, any of those strategies, if you buy it, these are the sort of typical costs that you're going to have to outlay. So anything you want to add to that, Ash?
No, but, well, yeah. Sound like a guy from Vicar of Dibley, don't I? Yeah, no. This is how, the only way, in my opinion, I mean, there's different ways of purchase options, lease options, all sorts of things, sandwich options that, you know, we can't talk about here that we use to adapt to certain strategies, certain properties, because every property deal is unique, right? But we've helped many people get onto the property ladder who have between £5,000 and £15,000. And as you can see here, that's not going to get you onto the property market. So it's essential to listen intently to what you have to say, because we've been through this hundreds of times, because this really is a way that you can get onto the market. And you talk about the current marketplace at the moment. Now, we don't like to be ambulance chasers, so to speak, or vultures waiting for something to die, but properties will be given up and sold quickly because there will be some sort of pain that's created by the coronavirus, money, whatever it might be. So there will be many more properties available for this scenario where we can save the landlord or the vendor, and then we can help them save their property, and we can have a win-win situation for either 1, 2, or even up to 3 different parties. So it's not something where we're going to take everything. It's going to be a win-win situation. That's something that we always try to put across.
Yeah, as the market conditions change, opportunities present themselves in different ways. And the truth is, people make more money in a downward or sideward market than a rising market. So there will be
100%.
opportunities. And if you understand where the opportunities are, and you have a number of these different strategies in your property investment toolkit, you will know which one to pull out based on a particular scenario. So we're just giving you additional tools that you can actually use. So as an investor opportunity, whether you're new or whether you're an experienced property investor, whether you want to own or just invest, sorry, you can do this for as little as £1,000. And why we say £1,000 is that these strategies, whether it be an option, so we'll go through what an option is in a minute, but an option in terms of how you secure an option, the least amount that you need to pay for an option in legal law in the UK is a peppercorn. That's how we used to buy things in the UK, by a peppercorn, transfer of a peppercorn. However, we now use legal tender, which is £1. So you can actually secure an option agreement, and I do this on a regular basis with a landowner, where we'll pay them £1 for the option agreement, hoping to get a planning gain, and then we pay them all at the end. But in terms of the price that you pay to secure the option, it's £1, but you're going to have roughly around about £1,000 in legal fees in the various documents that you have to create between you and the owner and the lawyers in between. So roughly £1,000. However, £1,000 is considerably cheaper than £45,000. So on the same basis, if you had £45,000, you could have 45 of these compared to just one. So as we talk through, you'll see what the real benefit and the cash flow advantages that this is going to present to you. Ash?
Yeah, exactly. So each property will be different. So, you know, as little as 1,000, it can go up from there. Let's be clear and concise about that. The one thing that I want to be clear on is we've done this with commercial properties and residential. So commercial properties, people sometimes stray away from it because they think it's going to be too hard. Fact is, commercial property owners are going to have equal, if not maybe more pain than residential, the residential owners. So don't be afraid to step into the commercial world, because in some cases, I can tell you it's actually easier than residential, and you have much less competition as well. It is something that you will need to educate yourself on wherever you are in the country, because you don't want to just start sort of trying stuff, because the legalities in the commercial world, they are easier because most of the commercial lawyers that you deal with, they know their stuff. However, with residential, some people will specialize in buy-to-lets. They won't know anything about service accommodation, not a lot about HMOs, whereas commercial is a lot more refined. So open your scope.
The one thing I will add, the government made another announcement to do with commercial landlords not being able to evict their tenants. So they're making it more complicated now. So you're going to have lots of landlords that are going to be much more receptive to this kind of structure. So we'll cover that. So rent to rent, or rent to buy, rent to sell. So what is it basically means? It basically means you're renting with the possibility of owning in the future. It's giving you the ability to secure something now with the possibility of owning in the future. And I'll give you some examples as we go further on. So it is similar to buying a car. So if you think when you go to buy a car, you put a deposit down, might be £1,000, you rent the car, you pay a fee for it for the next 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes 5 years. And at the end of it, you have a balloon payment. If you make the balloon payment, the car is yours. If you haven't, you've had the benefit of that car for the 5 years, and you're responsible for looking after the car, the maintenance, the repairs, the tires, changing the oil, washing the car, cleaning the car, looking after it during that whole sort of period. So it's a similar kind of concept. So it's basically a rental payment with a balloon payment at the end, which is where the tenant gets a mortgage at the end, which is their balloon payment. Some people say it's similar to a stepped ownership, because you can do this in different kind of ownerships. You can do it where somebody's renting from you and they take a percentage of the property, or they can look to buy all of it in the future. So it's a very flexible kind of structure that allows a win-win scenario. And we'll talk through all the different benefits for both the tenant and for the landlord. So you can see it's a win-win scenario on both parts. Ash?
Yeah, good. It's great. I mean, the stepped ownership, shared ownership there is something that the government can offer too on rent to buy. However, the way the mortgages and that thing and the way things are set up are a lot more complicated than what we can offer, so to speak, as a landlord. So it's a lot more refined. And obviously you're going to need a good solicitor. Now, when I say a good solicitor, yeah, most of them are good, but one that specializes in this type of transaction. And they need to also have another one where they also work with them and they can work on behalf of either the tenant buyer or the landlord, whichever side you're sitting on the side, whichever side of the fence you're sitting on. As we go along, you'll work that out, whether you're going to be the landlord providing a rent to own property, or if you're going to be somebody as a tenant looking for that. And this scenario here, and the reason Immanuel gives this is because most people have purchased a car on finance, so you understand most of it. I know some of you just go in there and sign a document. This is not something you should do here.
Right. So investor benefits, where do I start? There's so many benefits as an investor. So first and foremost, it's a hybrid of a lease option strategy, and it works really well in slow, uncertain property cycles such as we are now. It works in all cycles, but particularly now where people are more open to creativity and to come out of a particular scenario quickly.
And I think that's key. If I can just add that, opportunity is everywhere and all around you. You just need to know where to look and try to ascertain where you can slot in a strategy into the current property cycle. And that's all we've ever done over the decades. That's all Immanuel's ever done. You know, when we could do sale and rent back, we slotted that into the property strategies that we have. And then, you know, HMOs, will put that in a different area, and service accommodation another area, hotels in another area, and so on and so forth. So there are opportunities in every single market. And as Immanuel said, where professional property people make most of their money is when everyone else is uncertain, as it says there, and trying to offload.
Yeah, so one thing I will add, I did listen to another presentation yesterday around this. So what we're going to give you today is what they wanted to charge you £2,000 for. So you're going to get the main idea of the content with somebody who's going to charge £2,000, and we're going to give you the nuts and the bolts within an hour. So if you haven't donated, please do so, because the amount of content you're going to get here compared to other people that are charging for teaching this strategy is about 2,000. So I'll carry on. So this really attracts serious, committed, responsible tenants with a home owner mentality. We live in the UK where our home is our castle, and most people would like to own given the opportunity to do so. So, and I will talk about, I was on a program a few months ago called Rich House, Poor House. The lady that I was swapping with, you know, Amy MP, she is in a council property. She wants to own her own home. We're hoping to help her do that. We have this mentality, even if we're in a council home, that we want to own our own property. So finding ways that make it easier to allow people to do so on a win-win scenario, for me, is only a good thing. And by having a tenant that's ultimately going to buy the home from you, they're going to look after it very differently to a normal kind of tenant. So what it also does is maximizes your cash flow. And I'm going to show you how it does this. And I think you're going to be really amazed at just how much of your cash flow increases. And it will also turn around ailing properties that you have that might need tarting up, that need some additional work doing, and turn your portfolio that underperforming, where you maybe got small or minimal cash flow or minus cash flow. It will show you how to turn it around very, very quickly. Ash?
Oh, good, mate. That's good. I've got nothing to add on there. That's fantastic.
Okay, so we will move swiftly on. And it will also immediately enhance your property value. And again, you're going to see why able to do that. So you're probably going to be asking yourself, why don't people do this on a regular basis? Well, professional investors do this on a regular basis. It's just a lot easier in the current economic cycle. More opportunities will come because of where we are right now. So this strategy is used all the time. I use it all the time. If we have enough time later, I'll play a quick recording where I secured 9 properties worth 1.6 million for £10. That was what I paid the owner. Obviously, there was legal fees around that, so it cost me another £6,000 or £7,000 in legal work. But to secure the property, that's what it did. If we have enough time, I'll play it I've recorded it because people often say you can't do it, and then this is just a way of showing you that you can.
One thing I will add before you go on is I've just had a text from a few people like, do you have a course? We will do an online course for Rent to Buy for 10 people listening here today who have donated to Virgin Money, and we'll do that for free for you. That's zero cost. And I'll conduct that online for you. We'll set up a meeting next week. And all you have to do is send us an email, just a simple email, ashbanfield@gmail.com. And also if you can comment in the comments there, so Joshua maybe can capture. We'll take 10 people in the email. Just tell me why you want to do Rent to Buy and why we should give it to you for free. We need to know that we're not just wasting this information and that you're going to go and do something with it. We work very different to any other training company out there. We kind of choose people that we train. So let us know that, ashbanfield@gmail.com, and you'll get about 5 or 6 hours online training for zero charge.
They have to donate to NHS though?
You have to donate, yeah.
Okay. So investor benefits. So there are so many. So as an investor in the current climate, lots of people are going to have different issues with their credit history. You know, we're going through mortgage holidays. Is it going to have an effect on your credit? We don't know. So if you have credit problems, any kind of credit history, any CCJs currently, even if it's to do with utilities that you might have missed or council tax, you can still do this strategy if you have any poor credit history. Question number one. You don't need to obtain any credit. You do not need to get a mortgage, any kind of loan, no credit whatsoever. Those two things alone makes it a great strategy. Then you've got the low upfront cost compared to a traditional vanilla buy-to-let where you've got 20, 25% down, anywhere from 40 to 45,000 per investment. You've got very low upfront costs, typically around about £1,000, might be 1,500, might be 750, but in that sort of range, very low upfront cost. No stamp duty. If it's done correctly, you pay no stamp duty. Again, minimizes your cost. You don't need to get a mortgage, and I'll explain why you don't need to get a mortgage as we go further down, but all of these things are a massive benefit if you're an investor. No deposit. You need no deposit. Zero deposit. Sorry, you need £1. That is your deposit. If you can't find £1 somehow, then this is definitely not the strategy for you. Yes.
Hold on, Emmanuel. That pound that you put in, sometimes it can be more than that, but let's say it's £1. What happens to that pound? Do you get it back later?
So the pound comes off the purchase price.
Ah, so really it doesn't cost you anything in the end. Okay, good.
So it doesn't cost you anything. But again, it's how you structure this. With all of these things, Ashley and I will often talk about the difference between good advice and bad advice. If you think the cost of good advice is expensive, try the cost of poor advice. So the professionals that we use, the lawyers that we use, understand these strategies to allow us to implement it, to make sure that they safeguard both ourselves and the person that we're actually transacting with and the owner, because there's a tri-party agreement. You have the owner that you're doing the agreement with, there's ourselves, and the third party that we're going to bring in, which is the tenant buyer. Now, this is a massive difference. You increased rental income. Now, I've got an example a bit further down the line, but it allows you to increase your rental income dramatically. So if you have an underperforming property, even a property that's zero cash flow right now, we'll show you how you can turn that around very, very quickly. And most importantly, you have such a high cash on cash return. So if you're putting £1,000, £1,500, even £2,000 into one of these structures, and you're making £200 a month cash flow, that's $2,400 a year. On your own investment, that's 100% return. It's going to be much, much more than that, but that is really breaking it down as little as possible. Anything you want to add to that, Ash?
You know what? If I was listening to this and I'd never heard of this and I never thought that this was possible, I would think, nah, it's too good to be true. So explain more, please, for maybe a skeptic.
I will explain more, and this is a strategy that's used all the time in the commercial world. It's used all the time with commercial landlords. It's used all the time as a developer. It's also used in the commercial world where you have failing businesses. Many people know places like British Home Stores or Debenhams. If they've got a failing store or the company's failing, you can buy the company for £1 if you know how to take on their debt and restructure it. So this is what we're going to be doing and talking about. So this is a very well-known strategy. Just very few people know how to implement it in property. And by the way, over the next few weeks, you're going to have more and more people talk about this that have never done it, but they have training companies that want to start selling you these courses, but they've never done it. So they don't know the intricacies, they don't know the pitfalls, and they're sales and marketing companies that want to sell you their training. We do it on a regular basis. We do it. We have all the contracts. We can show many ones that we've done, but we just want to give you the information as fast as possible so you understand the strategy. Obviously, you can see I'm quite passionate about it because I do it. I know it. There's a saying, if you don't know it, if you don't do it, you don't know it. So you've got to do it to know it.
Correct.
You will get equity into the property, sometimes immediately, but enhance equity. So,
just on that, we're talking about income. Your income could go up by maybe 200 a month or £1,000 a month or whatever it is, depending on the property, sometimes thousands more if it's a commercial property. Now, what I want to try and get across is you're getting income immediately, virtually, even if it takes a month or 2 months. In properties, that's immediate income. What people seem to forget is they might say, I'm only getting £200 extra per month from this property. Hang on a minute. If you have a load of these properties, and let's say you have 4 that are worth 250,000 each, and they're worth $1 million on the market today if they were sold, in 10 years' time, property, assuming it doubles every 10 years, which is an average over the past data, I think from memory, that works out to about £8,000 per month increase in equity in that 10 years. So is property good? Absolutely. Where else can you get something that increases like that and pays you an income? This is life-changing stuff down the future. This is not get rich quick. This is get wealthy slowly.
Very much so. So income. So this is where it starts to get really exciting. So normally when we do this kind of presentation, we have some interaction. So it's very hard to do it without the interaction. However, so you're going to get an enhanced income through this strategy. So how does that actually work? So typically a cash flow as a property investor on a single let, if it's a multi-let, it'd be similar, but just giving you a vanilla buy-to-let strategy. So let's say we look at a rental income of £1,000 a month. From that, you've got to deduct costs. So first you're going to have the mortgage. So mortgage around about £400. You're going to have to pay a letting or management fee, which equates to roughly 10% of the rental income. You've got repairs and maintenance to do with your gas safety certificates, your electrical certificates, there's going to be some repairs. Again, that equates to around about 10% of your rental income. There's also going to be void. You have between tenancies, you might not get it filled straight away. There might be some additional work that you need to do. So that's another 100. So your net profit is around about £300. And that was what most investors look for when they do a traditional buy-to-let investment, that they're going to get around about £200 to £400 a month in cash flow per property as a vanilla buy-to-let. Anything on that, Ash?
No, that's good. That's good basics. Obviously, that's probably a typical property and the sort of value that you'd be looking at for the simplest, shall I say, rent to buy transactions.
Yeah, it's just an example. I want to get people to get an idea of just how much better this strategy is if you know how to implement it with, now you can do this with your existing portfolio. It doesn't have to be new ones. Any properties that you have, you can do this strategy very, very quickly. So not only for new ones that you find and acquire, but this is also for your existing portfolio, any ones that you have that are ailing. So let me get to the next slide. So this is now the enhanced cash flow as a property investor. So the rental income is now $1,300. Well, why would somebody pay you $1,300 when the rent market rent is £1,000. Great question. So when you have a tenant buyer, they have a different mentality. So the extra £300 that they pay you is going towards building a deposit for them over the next 3 to 5 years. So they're acquiring a deposit, which they haven't got now. So that allows them to put a deposit down for the property purchase in the future. That's why they will pay you more than the current rent. Next is the cost. So the mortgage is still going to be the mortgage. However, you have no letting fees. There's no letting agent. More importantly, there's no repairs and maintenance because it's set up in such a way they're a tenant buyer. From the day you enter in the agreement, they're responsible, just like when you buy a car. When you buy a car, the day you take it from the garage, you're responsible for the petrol, for the repairs, for the tyres, the maintenance. They're responsible in the same way. It's set up in exactly the same way. So there's no additional cost for you, no headache, no tenant ringing you up saying, my boiler's not working, my water's not working, the bulb's not working. None of those horrible calls that you might get on a regular basis. It's hassle-free investing. There are no voids. They're looking to buy the property from you in the future. They're not going anywhere. There's no voids whatsoever. So your cost, your ongoing costs are minuscule. So your net profit is 900 compared to 300. That's a massive increase on your property. I mean, it's massive. So the increase is £600 a month. That's a 200% increase from where you would have been on a vanilla buy-to-let. Ash?
Yeah, so with that, that sounds great. However, what about if my tenant decides in 2 years' time that they don't want to go through with this anymore? They decided they're broken up with the girlfriend or the boyfriend who they're going to buy the house with. Where am I?
Okay, so that's a great question. So it really depends on the terms that you agreed at the outset. And this webinar is probably not long enough to go through all the different scenarios. However, if you're doing it as a commercial transaction, same as you buy a car, if you agree terms, then you decide to give the car back during the period. If that was the terms that you've agreed, that's the terms that you've agreed. The option price and the terms that you agree are on that basis. Now, as a landlord, you can decide if you want to give them some of it back, all of it back. It really depends on how you've structured the purchase. So there's many different ways. And I said, I won't go through it all now. There are so many ways, but it's a great question. It's a commercial transaction, the same as we enter into commercial. So I'm a developer. I go make an option agreement with a homeowner that I'll buy their house that's worth 500 for 700,000. I go through all the planning costs that might cost me 30, 40,000 pounds. I don't get planning. I don't proceed with the purchase. Those costs are down to me. So it depends on what commercial transaction that you're doing. It's really quite important that you understand that. And that's why I said we can't go through all the different scenarios.
Yeah.
Just want to talk about the strategy and why it's such an amazing strategy. But it's a great question.
Good.
I hope that answered it.
It does. I know it's a question that most people ask when we teach them. So I thought I'll pick the number one question.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of equity, how does it enhance your equity and your profit? So again, I just love this strategy. I do it on a regular basis. It's an amazing strategy for both you and the tenant. So as a buy-to-let investor, let's look at a typical property. The value is 150,000. However, you're giving somebody the option to buy it in 5 years' time. So in 5 years' time, the property is not the value what it is today. But you're giving them the ability to increase and start saving for a deposit towards the purchase. So if we look
just one thing, because I know people will be asking why 5 years. It doesn't have to be 5 years. 5 years is a great term to allow the property to increase in value. This can sometimes happen over a 2-year period, depending on what other strategy you may be adopting to that property. You may be looking to increase it 2-for-1, title split, whatever it might be. So 5 years is just a fairly standard transaction. It can be 1 year, 2 years, it could be 10, it could be 15 years.
Yeah, so again, just answering that question, if property is moving very quickly, as in a rising market, the tenant buyer might want to instigate that much faster because the property price has increased to more than the strike price. So they might want to put it in place much faster, which is often happens. So let's say you agree the future value at 170,000. So from day one, your property's increased from 150 to 170. So you've already made a £20,000 profit on a future value that you've agreed by having a matrix. You can do that through lots of different places like net house prices, nationwide, get an idea where the market's going and set that price agreed in the future. So upfront fee. So the option fee, the tenant buyer will pay to you rather than paying a normal 5 or 10% deposit that we do on a mortgage. There's a commitment fee upfront option, which you get on day one. Could be anywhere from £1,000 to £5,000, could be a little bit more, but that's the sort of range. So you get a lump sum on day one as the option fee. Now that option fee comes off the purchase price if they execute the option further down the line. So like I pay an option to a landowner, that's my option fee. If I don't carry on with the option, that's my fee, that's my commitment fee. So the total profit is 20,000. You get 5,000 of it on day one, and you get the balance of the other 20,000 through the deposit that they're paying increased rent during the whole 5-year period. So the tenant doesn't feel it because they're paying it on the drip every month by the increase of £300 on their rental each and every month over the 5-year term. So they build up a much bigger deposit. In fact, that £300 a month is more than the 20,000 with the 5,000 commitments. So they've built a bigger deposit to make it easier for them to demonstrate to the lender. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Good. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's great. Yeah, we'll flow on to the next one.
Okay.
So we'll keep people thinking
because we're running out of time. So
I think we've probably got. I think we can max out to 10 minutes extra and 5 minutes questions. I know they want sort of 15, but yeah, let's give them the content. We've already had in excess of, I don't know, 50, 60 emails requesting the training. So it'll be something that I go through over the next couple of days. We may try and get you all on there. Let's see what we can do.
So first and foremost, this works really well in areas where there's little or no equity property. Now there's loads of these areas all over the place, all over the place. They work really well in studio apartments, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom properties, but they work really well in areas that haven't really moved very much over the last 3, 4, 5 years. So there's lots of areas. You can go on the internet, you can see which areas in seconds that have not increased dramatically. And I'll give you a few now. Liverpool, Manchester, Grimsby, Doncaster, Hull. There's just a few, Newcastle, a few of those different areas. So if we had more time, I could show you how you can find those properties very quickly just by using Rightmove and Zoopla. So this works really well with property with little or no equity. It also works with people that do have equity, but it's a more complicated strategy that I haven't got enough time to go through now. So it works with negative equity property. So people that are negative equity, where the mortgage is more than the value of their property, those people just want to move out. So I want to add one bit that I haven't actually put into the slides, and people only ever sell their property for one of 2 reasons. It's either to get access to the cash, which is the cash bit, the equity, or to get rid of the debt bit, which is the mortgage. Those are only 2 reasons why people ever sell their properties. You can either get rid of the debt or to get access to the equity. And if you understand that, there's ways around, and the language we use. So Sunny talked about this morning about communication. I do a load of stuff about communication. It's all of these strategies, well, this particular strategy is about communicating with the owner and the tenant buyer and the language that you use. But again, we don't have enough time for that today. I'm going to hurdle through. It works, unfortunately, with divorce or relationships being split up. And as we heard on the previous presentation, that is going to be on the rise. People that hated spending their time with their partner before, after this lockdown, they're going to want to run. So there's going to, although it might be funny, that there's a really serious side to that. So there's going to be lots of relationships where people want to break down, and especially if they have little or no or negative equity, this is a way to allow them to exit from that relationship very quickly. And financial loss to them is nil because they don't have any equity or very little equity. There's also going to be a massive amount of opportunity with tired landlords. There's going to be a lot of landlords that are not experienced, that are not professional, that have 1 or 2 investment properties, that have been relying on the rental income for their income. They don't want the headache. There's going to be a huge amount of opportunity, and it's how you communicate with them, and how you find them, and how you approach them. That, again, we haven't got enough time today to go through, but those are going to be opportunities. And just as importantly, Section 24 that's been around for a while now, where you cannot claim the mortgage payments as relief against your rental income. That's been building and building and building. And last year, as well as this year, is going to be a huge opportunity for people to help landlords come out of this particular scenario for a win-win scenario.
Just on that as well, the previous speaker spoke about service accommodation. Obviously, this is something we do a lot of. And I've got a group of 50 that Joshua was on there, the mentoring group, and they've done an exceptionally great job of getting their properties filled to at least 60, 75% with the key workers. And this is something that we did just as the coronavirus hit. We started saying, right, what can we do now to hit the peak? So there will be people who've, what I say, thrown in the towel. They've given up at the first smell of the coronavirus, COVID-19 and that type of thing. Now, some of these people own the properties, some of them don't. The ones that do own the properties, there is going to be an influx of these come onto the market. There's going to be a massive opportunity to turn perhaps one of these rent to buyers into a service accommodation and get commercial income. Yeah. Right, mate, we've got 5 minutes because there's lots of questions apparently.
Okay. I'm going to rush through. If we haven't got time, we'll stop the presentation. We can always do it later on. But anyway, rent to buy for the tenant. This works really well for people that want to get on the property ladder. First time buyers.
And this is probably most of the listeners, to be fair.
But it also works for families that want to buy, that have been renting a family home, that want to get into the property market. So not just first time buyers, it's really anybody that wants to enter into the property market, either whether it be an apartment or whether it be a house. So it works for both. It works especially well for people that are renting, that hate paying rent, that would really like to own, council tenants, anybody renting. We have this mentality in the UK, of ownership. And if we can find a way, the last 2 or 3 years, we've been talking more and more, how do we get on the property ladder? It's really difficult for us to the property ladder. People want to do it, they just can't afford to do it. This is a way of showing them how to do it. Much, much, much lower entry point as a deposit for somebody to get into the property. They can rent now and they can buy when they're ready. So if you set a term at the outset that they feel comfortable to build enough of the deposit, you set the price in the future, this allows them to build that deposit over a period of time. It gives really great flexibility that allows them to choose the best finance at the lowest rate at the most opportune time for them. So for a tenant, it's a great strategy. It allows them to conclude the purchase at a time that suits them within the period that's set out initially. Again, rent to buy avoids hefty fees associated with a conventional purchase, all the, the stamp duty, the mortgage fees, the broker fee, all of those initial upfront costs to a purchaser at the outset. So some really great advantages to tenant buyer. However, there's even more advantage. Yes.
Just one thing before you go in. Again, another question that's asked a lot. Tenant buyer. No, you don't have to live in the property. You can almost do like a rent to rent basis as well. So you don't have to live there. You can rent that property out for HMO. Obviously, you've got to get all licensing, whatever it needs, or service accommodation. Again, I've got to have all the permissions and criteria in place. You do not have to live there, but again, it can be written into the contract.
Okay, I'm gonna rush through because we've only got a few minutes left.
Yep.
Why is it another advantage for the tenant? Well, they don't need to have a great credit history. They might have CCJs. CCJs last typically 6 years. Lots of people have problems, but they don't have problems all the way through 5 years. So giving them a head start to allow them to repair their credit over a 3 to 5 or 6 year period is amazing for them. Lots of people have had credit problems in the past for one reason or another. It might be a small CCJ for electricity bill, council tax. So No need for them to obtain credit at the outset. It's giving them time to build up their credit profile. Again, very low upfront costs. These are all benefits. No stamp duty, no mortgage, no deposit, increased income, high cash flow, cash on cash return. It's for both the landlord and for the renter. These are all
win-win. Must be win-win.
Win-win, and ability for the renter to build equity within the property. So anything that goes over and above the purchase price is theirs. All the deposit that they're putting towards the properties, they're now creating equity. So a great strategy. It really is an amazing strategy. I can't say more than that. It really is a great strategy. So
I think I'm convinced.
So what kind of properties work really well for both the landlord and for the tenant? Well, a property that needs remodeling or refurbishing. If you've got a tenant buyer, it's going to be their home that they want to buy in the future. They're going to do repairs and make it their home. They're going to decorate it. You know, when I did the Rich House, Poor House, Amy, you saw her property. She took pride in her home. She did things in her property. She changed the tiles, the decorating, the carpet. Yeah. She wanted to make it her home. That's what you want. You want somebody that's going to buy in to be their property, increase the value, increase what it looks like. So it's a win-win scenario. Increase the property value and the tenant equity. It's a win-win scenario. Increase the equity for you, increases the value for them so they can purchase it faster. It also allows them to build their deposit much faster. If the property increases in value by the work they do to the property, that's a fantastic thing for them.
On average, every pound you spend on a house, depending on the area, will go up in £3.
Yeah. And it's a great strategy because you can use it anywhere in England or Wales. You can't do the same thing in Scotland. There's different rules and regulations, but most of us, well, I'm certainly in England, so I think most of the people are here. It's a great strategy that you can use anywhere in England and Wales.
Let's cut it there and take questions.
Okay.
We have a little bit more, but for those who are going to come on a training course, you'll get all of it. And I think we're now hit about 100. So hopefully, Joshua, they've all resulted in, as we requested, donations as well.
Yeah, you know, really, thank you very much for that, guys. We had a lot of donations. You know, off the top of my head, without counting them, we pretty much about, you know, close to £1,000 in donations.
Well done, everyone.
You know, during your slot there.
Absolutely brilliant. Well done.
Let's have a look, see what questions we've got. So yeah, that's a really great strategy. I think it's certainly a lot of people would be able to take advantage of that and really start looking for properties immediately. A couple of questions we've got. So yeah, you would have mentioned about the tenant buyer can let it. Does the option need to be registered at a land registry?
Yes.
Yes, it does, and it's registered with a number of other documents at the same time. Again, there's not enough time to go through all of this, but there's a whole legal structure around this to protect you, to protect the tenant, and also to protect the seller that you're done the strategy with at the same time. So everybody's got to be protected within this tri-party agreement.
No, perfect. And in terms of the extra rent charged, that basically goes towards their kind of deposit or contribution, does that need to be kept in a separate account?
It doesn't need to be kept in a separate account, but it does need to be registered and logged because the lender will want to see those payments. The renter will need to, or the landlord will need to produce that to the renter's solicitor at the time of completion to show it's been building up the deposit. So it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So if you want to increase your cash flow, you can, but you can also put it separately. So you've got the flexibility depending, again, on what you agree between yourself and the renter.
Some will choose an escrow agreement that the solicitor takes care of. So the options are there.
Say there is a mortgage on the property. Does the mortgage lender need to be aware?
No, the mortgage lender doesn't need to be aware. The mortgage lender needs to be aware that somebody else is taking over the property. So again, we go through this whole strategy. So if somebody is owning the home, one of the first things you need to do is get consent to let. But again, that's part of the strategy and the legal framework that we go through to make sure you can do this strategy all the way through.
Fantastic. So where do you find people who want to own their own homes? Is there an enhanced model, and do you kind of do any credit checks?
So the answer is yes, we do credit checks. We want to get some idea of where their credit is. So if somebody's got a huge range of CCJs, that's an alarm signal. But if they've got one or two small ones, typically for £100 or £200, you can ignore those because they're going to be building up their profile. They're going to be paying you an option fee between £1,000 and £5,000 up front, so they're getting committed. So where do you find tenant buyers? They are everywhere. So, however, you can advertise for tenant buyers either through Gumtree, through Rightmove, and through Zoopla and other platforms. So
social media.
Yeah, so there is a strategy of how you do this and how you attract a tenant buyer. But when you advertise the property, you advertise it in a certain way that attracts normally a tenant buyer to that kind of property. So rather than going to rent, they're looking at now ownership for the similar kind of money they would pay for renting. So if you think about an average tenant, they're going to have to pay 6 weeks deposit. So if it's £1,000, they're going to be paying £1,500 anyway. So for a few £1,000s more, they're going to secure an option. So it's done in a different way. Instead of an AST, it's done under an option agreement. So it's a different framework, but the cost outlay is very similar for the tenant buyer.
Also, obviously, when you're talking about doing credit checks, because they're going to be a tenant, they're going to have the tenant check anyway as well to make sure they can afford the rent.
Yeah, perfect. What else have you got? So, so that's how do you approach agents with this?
Again, going through the whole strategy. So with an agent, agents are your lifeline. They're the ones that are going to bring clients here because they have lots of properties on their marketplace. So we have two strategies, one where you go to agents, one where you find the owners themselves. But with the agent, as long as they know they're going to get paid their commission, that's all they're interested in. So, and you would pay the commission to the agent. So typically, on a £150,000 purchase, agent will get 1.25%. You negotiate that and you pay that at the time you enter into the option agreement, so they get paid it at the same time. That's part of your option fee. As I said, £1,000 is roughly your lowest amount, but it could be anywhere between £3,000 and £5,000 as your option fee. Again, way cheaper than £45,000.
And you need to educate. You need to educate the agents. And we don't talk about lease options or anything technical like that. The reason why we call this rent to buy is because they understand that, because there is obviously the government scheme that they will understand a lot about, and we just do it slightly different.
Perfect. So I suppose really the last question really is, I know you mentioned that book, the ebook you've got. Where can everybody get their hands on that?
So I've made it available as a free download on my website. The 6 Steps to Financial Freedom, the number 6 steps to financialfreedom.com. There's a download. They could just put their details in. They can download the book, and it's part of what we're trying to do to raise funds for the NHS.
Perfect. We'll get that link put out in all of the chats so everybody can download that. That's great. And really, I'd like to take time to thank you guys for taking the time out of your days to contribute to this event, deliver massive value, and help educate people.
Good man, welcome, and keep doing what you're doing, buddy. It's good.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say, repeat again. Yesterday, I did listen to 2 other very similar presentations where they wanted 1997 for less content than we've delivered today. So if they haven't donated, please donate. There's been a massive value. There's going to be lots of other speakers going to add even more value. This is really for a great cause. Please donate.
We've had 78 people who want the training so far. So good. Well done, guys. Thanks, Joshua. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
All right, perfect.